Welcome to Warehouse Automation Matters. I'm your host, Mary Hart, and I'm here today with Andy Johnston, Senior Director of Innovation at GEODIS, to discuss where to start with warehouse automation. Andy, welcome to the show. Can you start by telling us a bit about your role as Senior Director of Innovation at GEODIS and how you became involved in this industry to start with?
Absolutely. So I started at GEODIS actually 12 years ago and began my journey in logistics and operations. I was out in one of our facilities here, local to Nashville, for about 2.5 years in various roles, working for a couple of different operations there. Started as a supervisor and worked my way up to an operations manager. From there, I transitioned to a role here in our corporate office just south of Nashville, doing some front end sales solutions work, financial forecasting, modeling, warehouse design, you name it, to bring on new clients to GEODIS, and kind of worked my way up there as well. And then, along with, I think, a lot of other warehouse providers, companies, 3PLs, we started to dip our toe in the world of warehouse robotics. And we saw this probably 6 or 7 years ago, something that was going to be really industry changing. So the organization decided that we needed to put a group around us that was going to be focused on this. So I had an opportunity to move into a role leading the innovation efforts for the Americas region, and didn't really know too much about the robotics world, but was very interested to learn more and saw it as a great opportunity to not only grow with the industry, but also within the organization. So my role where I sit today is to identify workflows in our operations that need productivity enhancements that could be a little bit more streamlined, and then go out into the robotics world and see if there is a solution that fits that. From there, my team takes it really from beginning to end. We will do data analysis, we do the financial modeling, we work with our internal customer success team, we work with external customers, we work with operations, all the way through the implementation, the IT integration, if that's required, through go live to steady state, and then kind of rinse, repeat, go back and find the next thing, or take what had been a success in the past and implement that again in another account down the road.
And what does innovation mean to you in the context of warehouse operations?
Yeah, to put it simply, it's a tool that we use to better serve our customers. We also are solving a specific challenge with the innovation, and we want to increase our capabilities as a company. So what does that mean a little bit more in detail is we want to leverage new technologies to enhance our teammates' daily work lives. Pushing that cart around, using an RF device, lifting heavy cases over and over. It's tough work. It's work that's required for the industry, for our world, for the distribution of products, but it's difficult. So we want to use that technology to try to make their lives easier. We also want to meet our customers' expectations by increasing our fulfillment speed and providing the best possible service that we can to our clients. And we know that there's labor challenges in the industry, and that, with labor challenges increasing and the time to fulfill also increasing, we need to find ways to make our teammates' lives easier to help with that.
Fabulous. We're going to get into future trends and innovation in a few minutes. But first, let's talk about two of the companies who are just beginning their journey into warehouse automation. Where on earth should they start? What's the first step they should take?
Right. Yeah, I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but the first place you have to start is, what problem are you trying to solve? It's very easy to look at the industry and see all the different options that are out there, but without coming into that focused on what you want to solve, you're going to be distracted with everything that's there. So number one is identify the workflow that you want to solve, and then identify the technology that you want to introduce into that. The technology that's being implemented into the warehousing environment today is a solution to automate the movement of the inventory right inside the facility to make it easier. If you think about a traditional warehouse, it's A lot of rack inventory is slotted intelligently, but albeit still spread out. If we can try to make that inventory flow through the facility in a more logical way to reduce the travel for our teammates, that's a win. So a lot of what you see out there is largely focused on each picking and reducing that travel. But there's a lot of other technologies there that are starting to go into other areas of the warehouse, like case movement, larger pallet movement, even just kind of A to B shuttling. So going back to the workflow, once you've identified that, you want to understand the finer details of the workflow, and we'll talk, we can talk a little bit more about that. But then you also want to ask yourself, like, what does this work look like? How big are these orders, both in true size and how many units are going on these orders? Something that's very important in our industry is, what does peak season look like? We may need to pick 5,000 units a day for non-peak, and then we've got to get up to 15,000 units a day during peak. So that solution now looks very different than it did in April versus mid-November. And then the last thing probably to think about is, what does this process look like today, and how are we going to transition that to the new process? That's part of that change management cycle that you're going to go through with operations.
And how do you assess whether a warehouse is even ready for automation? And what key factors should they consider in that process?
Yeah, there's a lot for sure. I would start by saying it's definitely easier to incorporate automation and robotics into a greenfield or a newly constructed project, because then you can plan the design of the facility around the capabilities of the technology, if that makes sense. Now, there's a lot out there that can be implemented into sites that are already there with very little change, but there's nuances that can help automation technology to traverse the facility even better. It's important to know that, not every facility is going to be amenable to reaping the benefits of the technology. So going in and having an understanding of the cans and cannots of the technology is very helpful. Automated facilities differ from more manually based in terms of their physical attributes. So it's very important to verify that that facility layout is conducive to the flow of the robot's movements. A couple of examples of that are making sure that aisles are wide enough for the robots to move through, and understanding, do I want, one-way travel versus two-way travel, making sure those robots can pass each other. A facility cleanliness is also extremely important. These robots are navigating a facility, or they see a rack or something in the ground. It's hard to determine exactly what that is. What they see is an obstacle. So making sure that the facility is clean is also very important. One that we learned about, or I learned about in my, kind of journey coming into this, is the quality of the floor can be something that you want to look at. So, navigating over cracks or bumps or uneven surfaces in the floor is something that can certainly impact the way that a robot or an AGV travels through a facility. So you want to take a look at that. And then I would say probably another thing, definitely not the last, and kind of going back to that, like, order size. In the case of an e-com fulfillment center, you want to understand the volume that's going through that today. Usually, if you're like 3,000 to 5,000 orders a day, that's where you can start looking at different types of automation. If it's anything less than that, it's certainly worth it to take a look and see if there's something that financially makes sense. But usually when we're under that, what we're seeing is a one shift operation that may not be too heavily burdened by the labor. So there, maybe the manual operation is the best, both for us and the customer.
And once a company has gone through that and they've determined they're ready for automation, why should they work with a partner in the process?
There's, obviously there's a ton of very intelligent people that work at all of these companies. But one thing is, we partner with our vendors that specialize in automation because that's all they do. They're experts on it. They understand how that solution works. They can understand the best way to implement it, to integrate. So we want to partner, and use that word specifically. You've heard me use it a lot, and I'll probably use it many more times as we talk here. But, it's a conversation that goes back and forth between us. So it's really important that the people that we're working with understand our processes and understand the dynamic environment of a warehouse, and that we understand what their capabilities are. Rather than taking on the initial cost and ongoing risk of setting up the warehouse automation system ourselves, a lot of times it's a better decision to shift some of those risks elsewhere by working with a partner. For example, GEODIS, as a 3PL provider, can invest in an automation technology on our customers' behalf. And we can give the customer several options to go and meet the needs that they are looking for, both for implementation and operational cost. Doing that can significantly reduce the upfront cost for our customers and the risk, and make it a much more attractive business case for our customers. We can also be good partners for automation companies, because they can help businesses create the right mix of automation technology and pricing models. So we can help spread that cost for our customers across the contract term, instead of it kind of being all up front. So, we've had a lot of success finding the right companies to work with. And by keeping those lines of communication open for them to understand our business better, it's just really, I think, been better for us and better for our partners and our customers to have that more kind of cohesive relationship as we move forward.
Perfect. So, how does a company go about finding that right partner?
So we started with the workflow. We've got that identified. Now we need to go find the company that's able to solve that workflow. So there's a lot of vendors out there, a lot of companies that can probably do that. But we really want to focus in on who has the industry experience and the business understanding of what we're trying to do. Tons of options today, but not all companies are created equal when it comes to really understanding the business. I think there are a lot of very intelligent roboticists out there, robotic engineers, data analysts, code developers, things like that. But understanding the ins and outs of a warehouse and the warehouse process can prove to be extremely important. So let's talk about the visibility that companies may be able to give to the warehouse. So you have a robot that works extremely well in a building. It can travel from point A to point B. It can carry the inventory it needs. It's got a good user interface. But if I'm the operator in that facility, I want to be able to see, how many orders have I given to the system? How many orders have been processed? What's my productivity today, both for my teammates and maybe for the robot? What's the distribution of those orders? What's the throughput time from the time I give it to you to the time I get it back? All of these data points are very important to operate a facility. And so that's why I say, kind of go beyond what you can see rolling around out there on the floor. What information am I going to be able to get back from the system that's going to help me manage this? So we should really, and all companies honestly, should be looking for partners with that experience, that have that robust software suite to go along with the hardware. I think there's a lot of people out there that can build a robot, but providing the software and the visibility to go along with it is something that can really make a company stand out. And if you find the partner that can answer those type of questions and show you that data, they're probably going to be right up there at the top of people that you would want to partner with to help you solve that workflow.
So, with so many technologies available and they're vast in number, how do you guide companies in choosing the right automation solutions for their specific needs?
Yeah, so we'll keep building kind of on what we've been talking about. We've got the workflow, now we see the capabilities. I think the next thing there is ensuring that there is a cultural fit between the two companies. I think a lot of times this sometimes gets overlooked, but from my experience and the relationships that I've forged from being in this role, this can be very, very important and can really make those go lives or those implementations work a lot better. So, what I would say is focus on avoiding purely transactional relationship. While contracts and performance expectations and KPIs are important, we need to be able to measure what we're doing so that we know if we're being successful or unsuccessful. Focusing on a relationship that really has an open line of communication and a process for continuous improvement between the two companies is very helpful. And the way I kind of say that is like, we want a collaboration between us and our partner because we want to help our partner develop their product as much as they want to help us with our operation. Some relationships that I have with companies out there are formed around that, helping them develop their product by getting into a live environment in one of our operations. I think there's a lot that you can learn in a lab environment and a lot that you can simulate, but there's also a lot that you would never think to bring into a lab environment or simulate in that. So getting into that building or a live environment can really help some of these companies understand, like, okay, we saw like this type of rack profile when we got into the building. Is that something we should account for when we're looking to get into business with 3PLs? And we can say, yeah, absolutely. I think that's typically how we set our facilities up. So you want to develop your vision system on your robot to be able to account for 2 pallet beams and no wire mesh stack. I understand that's easier for the robot, but that's not necessarily real world. So all that to say, it's, really having that back and forth and developing a true product together. And then the next step, I would say there, after you've kind of understood what that cultural relationship would be, I call it the proof of life. A lot of people that are listening to this may have been to Modex or ProMat, which are huge trade shows that happen annually in either Chicago or Atlanta. If you haven't been to that, I would highly suggest going. You can learn a lot. And at those shows, you're going to be overwhelmed with the amount of robots that you see moving around, on the trade show floor. So that looks really good. There's a lot of companies that have very robust robots that look good, but how many are really implemented out there in the wild? It's easy to showcase your project or your product to the public, but we want to know how they operate firsthand. So show me a facility where they're operating. Show me some data that you have from another customer site that may look like mine. Help me understand that, you've been through this process a few times before, so that I know that what I'm looking at is.
And that goes into the next question, because if you're seeing these technologies on the floor at Modex and you think they look great there, they might not look as great on your own work floor. So what are some common pitfalls or mistakes to avoid when you're selecting automation technologies?
Yeah, it goes back to what we just talked about. There's just so many out there that I think you can get overwhelmed with looking at all of those and finding something that you think could solve the physical attributes of the problem, but not necessarily be a valuable fit to the business. That goes back to talking about it can move it from point A to point B, but once I hand it over to the system, I have no idea where that inventory is. I don't know if it's done. I don't know if it's in progress. We need that visibility. So having very in-depth conversations with companies is really important to understanding which ones are for real. Ask questions about the user interface. I think partnerships should be taken very seriously when considering the implementation of these robots. Ask them questions about being in a facility. Are there people that work for this company who have previously worked in distribution, whether it be directly for a company or for a 3PL? I can think of a few companies that I've talked to in the past where I get introduced to somebody and it's, they used to work for company A at their distribution facility, or they were over inbound and outbound operations, or they used to work for this 3PL. And immediately I think this person gets it. They're going to understand what our lives are and how we can solve for this particular workflow. I can't really put enough emphasis on that, to make sure just understand the business. I would say a really common pitfall there is just finding the nice shiny object that you think is going to help you. Once you get into deeper conversations, you start hearing some things where it's like, man, they really don't understand what our day to day is like and what we're trying to solve.
So, what advice would you give to companies that might be hesitant to take the plunge into warehouse automation?
Well, we're going to continue to see demand amongst brands and from our customers to implement the latest technology into their warehouses. They want to drive those efficiency improvement, they want to increase throughput, and they want to offset the labor challenges. So, to put it simply, I think if you're not prioritizing technology at this point, it's probably going to be a competitive disadvantage for the brand. Now, the disclaimer there is make sure it's the right technology and the right automation. I see this as, we're probably 7-8 years into really breaking that barrier into warehouse automation and warehouse robotics, but I still think that we're in the early stages. There's so much out there that can be done. It's going to be really interesting to see where it goes. And I think, if you're hesitant, reach out and talk to a few companies about what their journeys has been and why they did it. And I think what you'll find is there's going to be some initial challenges to do it, but once you do, it's really a better solution for the throughput and for the teammates' work lives. You reduce the training time, you probably increase satisfaction. So all in all, it's going to be a better solution for you.
Let's shift gears and talk about a topic that's near and dear to your heart, innovation. As technology continues to evolve, what future trends in warehouse automation do you think will be most impactful for businesses who are starting out today?
Yeah, there's no doubt that it's going to continue to feature more and more automation. I believe that the future looks more like humans and robots collaborating together. That's already happening, but the technology is going to become more complex, not in a bad way, but I think more complex in a way that it's going to be able to do more. So the way in which robots and humans interact will change and will adapt to that. I think robotics and automation used inside the warehouse is going to become faster and smarter today. I would say the trend is it's going to continue to go up. A lights out facility, that's kind of the buzzword right now. When are we going to see that lights out facility? My answer to that is I don't know, but I think there are going to be more solutions to automate more of the processes inside of a building. And by doing that, we're going to create different jobs for our teammates and teammates across this industry that are going to be probably more complex, that are really going to provide like a career launching pad for them to develop a very specific and detailed skill set, to be able to work with this type of technology. But yeah, to sum it up shortly, technology is not going to go away. We're going to continue to get demand from our customers to fulfill faster, fulfill more, but do it all in the same space that we already have, because we don't necessarily want to pay for more space, right? Let's make the space that we have more efficient.
And what's one key takeaway you'd like our listeners to remember about starting with warehouse automation?
I would say once you've done all your homework and you have that right partner, they understand your business, we all have our goals set out and we know what we want to achieve, manage the expectations of that project. Robots are not going to fix processes up and down the work stream from the specific process that you're trying to fix. They're not going to fix your inventory accuracy. If anything else, they're going to start to make those issues pop up, right? So you understand where your opportunities may lie at other places in the building. Now, that could be a good thing, because if you need to focus on your inventory accuracy, or if you need to focus on slotting, that's just going to help make the robots and the overall workflow more efficient. So to manage those expectations, you need to have communication with the people that are on the floor, that have that on-site presence with the expert to oversee the testing and implementation to ensure the successful, smooth transition. So the takeaway is, keep that line of communication open with your robotics partner, with the people on the floor that are going to be running this, and make sure that we understand all the aspects of the procedure that we're working through.
Thank you again, Andy, for joining me today. It was a great discussion. And thanks as always to our listeners. We are here to help you move what matters in your warehouse.